welcome to this next stage of the EMCC Global GPS Dialogue Series. We are with Geetu Bharwaney for the second of in a three-part series looking at our needs, our challenges, and our opportunities in this current climate. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand you straight over to Geetu.
Okay, thanks very much, Nicola, and welcome everybody. It's wonderful to see all of you joining this dialogue. So the topic is issues and opportunities for the coaching profession. It's my belief that this is an important for all of us in all of our different contexts, and nice to see familiar faces who joined the first dialogue and also many new faces. Everybody is very welcome. So some quick words on how this is going to work. So we want to encourage you to use the chat function throughout, and we will be launching questions and asking you to write into chat. We will be also then reading the chat because there are people connected on YouTube. It enables others to also, join and be part of this dialogue. And we encourage you to stay on audio mute. If I could ask you to audio mute so that the background noise is limited. And we will try and get as many verbal voices, spoken voices as possible. And we encourage you to keep your input short so that we can hear from as many as possible. We mentioned about adding your country name to your screen name. That would be very helpful. And if you can stay till the end, we're going to try to end on time, and then we'll stay for sort of informal chat for anybody that wants to stay, 10-15 minutes after the hour. So let's move to the topic. So today's topic is about the challenges. And Dialogue 1 really set us up well for the territory and the landscape and the current feeling of what's going on. So for the benefit of people who weren't in the first dialogue, I know that we shared the recording and also the written outputs. We wanted to just start by sharing what happened in Dialogue 1. So I come at this topic very much, with multiple hats, as a coach, as a team coach, as a leader of a practice that focuses on emotional intelligence. And I'm also an EMCC volunteer, so it's a great pleasure to actually be invited to facilitate this dialogue for all of us. So the purpose is that we come together, and I'm going to be using the word profession to describe all of us and to hear each other so that we can actually, be a supportive force in this moment that we're living through in the world. And by the end of this series, what we're hoping for is that we'll be sharing in the October EMCC Global Providers Summit to share back what this collective group sense as both the challenges but also what we're going to do about them. So we sincerely hope that those of you who are part of today's dialogue will join for the next one as well and continue the dialogue further. So the whole frame of this is that we believe that no single coach, no single supervisor, mentor, global council member has all the answers to what's emerging, but we can come together in dialogue as a very powerful force for making meaning of what's going on and understanding what's emerging so that we can take this forward with shared understanding. And shared understanding is one of the three known social needs in groups. So Susan Fisk's work concluded that there are three important needs for people to bring their best foot forward in any team. And those needs are belonging, shared understanding, and also control. And control meaning, the autonomy to be able to actually create things and to actually make things happen. So that's one of the important sort of underpinnings of why we're doing this dialogue in this particular way. So in the dialogue, we've had interest from many different parts of the world. And, you know, we're very keen to bring all of the voices of organisation members, global representatives of the EMCC, coaches, supervisors, mentors, team coaches as well. So in the first dialogue, just very briefly, we had 3 parts to the dialogue, and dialogue 1 was all about taking a pause. And what we asked was, first of all, where are we now? And there were multiple questions on where are we now, and what we're learning, what the fears are, what our role is. So to give you a sense of some of the key themes that came up, and as I mentioned earlier, I re-listened to the entire video and realized that there was just a whole depth of what came through. So there was a whole sense that this is a real opportunity for us as coaches to do our best work because of the nature of the not knowing and the uncertainty. There was also a big sense of the anxiety and the fear for the mental health of both our clients and also ourselves needing to be very stable and grounded in this moment. And there was this notion of épanouissement, which was this notion of, you know, opening up as a flower does, so that we can really open up to our potential as a profession, but also as, you know, for our clients of coaching, mentoring and supervision. And then we moved on to thinking about our the metaphors that summarize that. So let me just play a short video with those metaphors. So with that, there were many amazing things that were said, but there was one quote from one of our dialogue members that really has stuck out, and I've been thinking about it a lot. It was, you know, this notion that, you know, there is no traffic, we are the traffic, and this notion that we are part of, you know, what might be stuck in this scenario that we're experiencing. So we then went on from looking at those initial kind of where are we now, so you've seen those metaphors. We moved into looking at what are our needs in this moment, and there was a lot of great conversation about our needs being all about connection, alignment, being a sounding board, being with like-minded people to actually inspire and help normalize what's going on, but also have space to grieve what's now in the past. And there was a big theme in that dialogue about consciousness, the need for us to be conscious of us in terms of not only in our professional roles, but in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and being able to activate the care and compassion that the world and our communities need, you know, our workplaces need. And then from that, when we looked at the roles that we play, and this all leads into our dialogue theme for today, which is why we want to recap this. The roles that came up was that we're really able to both hold the space for clients, but also challenge the deeper exploration so that our clients can respond to what's going on and not react, and that we actually role model what we need to do in this moment, and that our role is to show up as our best selves and to bring the patience and the safe place for this exploration to occur. And somebody described it as a kind of like conductor, you know, that there are these multiple moving pieces, and we actually need to play a role of helping to bring some meaning and understanding to that. And then finally, in the dialogue, the third thing we looked at was what is our sort of like utopia as a body of professionals and as a body of supporters, community members. What do we actually want? And with that, again, this theme of consciousness came up very strongly there. There was this notion that the only stability is us as individual practitioners, professionals, and that we need to be able to, you know, help co-create a much more compassionate, caring society, and that that's part of what we're doing in our work as coaches. And I thought that, you know, that there was an enormous, there was just, yeah, sorry, I have the exact quote here. You aren't stuck in traffic, you are the traffic. That was the key sort of like, that's why you see those kind of images of the roads, etc. in the metaphor. And thank you, Jason, who helped to put that video together for us. So it's about how do we really change, act meaningfully, and create the inclusivity that the world needs, and as agents of positive change. So let me just pause there and see if anybody wants to add anything else that they heard either from the recording or from actually being part of that session. Anybody like to jump in?
Since Nicola is so warm in persuading me, so I'll say something. I think the thing about the only stability is us, that's challenging to me. I don't think we are the only stability is us. I think as a statement that is, I'm reflecting on it. So I think that doesn't sit completely well with me at the moment.
Okay, Jafar, thanks for sharing that. And, you know, anyone else want to jump in? Because, you know, we want to just hear a few voices on that first dialogue before we jump into today's dialogue.
Morning, everyone. It's Naomi.
Hello, Naomi.
I wasn't able to participate in the first part, and I didn't listen to the recording, but your summary was just very inspirational to me, and I just want to say that. The metaphors is really emotive, and I do believe as coaches we have a great opportunity to create a community of caring and compassion. I'm very glad I dialed in this morning.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Actually, Naomi, just listening to what you said, I've actually just remembered one other theme that was expressed, which was about fear. The fear of actually not knowing how to be. And maybe, Jafar, that connects with what you've just said about, you know, what didn't kind of resonate with you. You know, that there was this we had a discussion about there is this kind of not knowing exactly how to be in this moment. So while some people said, you know, their work-life balance has become very, very high in priority and understanding, there wasn't kind of like a shared, you know, there wasn't a shared belief about exactly what we do. And that's exactly what, you know, today is about, going deeper into the challenges. So I think, Jafar, you set us up well on that theme. So let me just go back to the sharing of slides to set up our first set of questions. So dialogue 2 has got 3 parts, and this is all about the problem solving, the barriers and tensions. And before we problem solve, we need to actually be able to name them. So this dialogue today is about naming what do we perceive as in our way. So if I could invite you to open up the chat, because the first question is going to come up. And Nicola, if I could ask you to type this into chat, that would be super helpful, this question that's coming up. So what do we sense is in our way between where we are now, however we describe that in our own minds, and where we prefer to be? What do we sense is in the way? So if I could invite you to reflect for a moment and use the chat, everyone, to write things in chat. And Nicola, if there's anybody in YouTube that is adding, if we could put their comments in chat as YouTube additions, that would also be great.
I will do.
Looking at these, wow, there's an amazing collection here. So persuading others, being persuaded by others, a little bit of imposter syndrome, the high value, the high level of uncertainty, socially a bigger divide between those that can work from home, have a job, and those that don't, who have to travel or are without a job. Fears, previous examples of situations. I'm not sure the destination is known yet, something about relearning. Stability of the social contract, mixed sense of fear and confusion that's hard to pin down, that cloud my confidence in the challenging access where I'm normally energized. Who to trust, who actually knows the right path. Lack of certainty, variety of challenges of clients. Fear, navigating change without knowing what success will be. Uncertainty remains a theme, because just when we think COVID's starting to be less a problem, further lockdowns happen. On a practical level, loss of coaching business due to extreme financial pressures in the client base. Which one to prioritize? Every single element seems urgent and important. Difficult to let go and trust others, different perspectives. I think our instrumental doubts about our coaching, can I provide the right level of challenge? Maybe they need and I need to listen. Is that okay? Am I up for this? I very much identify with the priority aspect raised by Sharifa, the birth of a new way of helping coaching consulting, concern that we are not learning from this in terms of climate change issues. Sharifa, could I ask you to just speak to the 3 things that you've just shared in chat? Just say a bit more.
Well, okay, what did I say? Okay, the first is it's a mixed sense of fear and what did I say? It was so what did I say? Can somebody help me? It's a sense of fear and confusion. It's not 100% fear and it's not 100% confusion. It's like there is a new breed of these 2 elements mixed together. And I normally in my practice, I tend to balance between the supporting and challenging role of a coach. I find that's a bit hard on the challenging part, that I still need to sit on the empathic side of being a coach. and not moving to the challenging part because it seems fake to me. That's the first one.
Thank you, Sharifa. Anyone else want to jump in on anything you said or didn't say in answer to this first question?
Yeah, I'll say something. I think what I put down is that what gets in the way is the fact that there's no real stability at the moment. Everything is very fluid at the moment, and it's changing from day to day to day to day, hour, it's just changing. And I think that it's very difficult to, I mean, we do move into the space of being very empathetic to our clients because we're all in this together. But it's very difficult to support and facilitate because there's nothing to anchor. Using one of your metaphors, there's nothing stable enough that you can say, right, okay, we'll anchor that and we'll try and move towards that. I think that's what is quite challenging for me anyway at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you, Julia. So welcome to the people who've recently joined us. It's good to have other voices. So what I want to do is I want to go further with those barriers and challenges, and I want to encourage you, similar to things like, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where you have like a structured approach. I want to encourage us to think about what do we need right now versus what is priority right now and how might they conflict. So I've got an example here that came up from the first dialogue and just from thinking further about what people said. So there may be a need to kind of invent a new way, invent the new. A priority might be sort of the co-creation and the collaboration, which came through as a key theme. But, the conflict or the tension between these two might be that, one requires kind of like, there may be some urgency around creating the new, but there may be a need to go slower in order to do it with all the voices heard in a co-created way. So again, I want to invite everybody to reflect for a few minutes and write in chat, need, priority, conflicts, so that we can look at these barriers in a bit more detail. And again, if Nicola, I could ask your help to put the question in the chat, that would be really helpful. So for the benefit of people who are on YouTube as well, so we're needing comforting words that everything's going to be fine. We need vision, clarity, we need cohesion and leadership. We need certainty, clarity, and what's priority is moving on with life. Another priority to hold everyone's well-being in a collective way so that no one's left behind. We need acceptance of this could be the new. The priority is learning to just be, getting more present in the here and now. And the conflict is wanting the new to be different and better than before and now, and this is just a journey. And financial, working from home, health, short-term and long-term connectivity needs. Need more of this type of community support, learning and sharing. We need some form of stability, not necessarily fixed, but there's just a deep sense of not knowing what's next. We need to feel comfortable in uncertainty. A priority is to be with the client in their uncertainty, and there may be an inherent conflict there. We need to pay attention to my own feelings and emotions about the current situation. How might this impact on who I bring to the session? Presumably, Kevin, I'll ask you to clarify, but presumably you mean what else is going on in your, maybe you could just jump in on that one, Kevin.
Sure. I think for me, from an emotional intelligence perspective, who I bring to the session, how I am with the client, can really impact on how engaged they are with me. And if I haven't paid enough attention to how I'm feeling about the current situation and what that means to me, I'm not necessarily being in the right space or bringing my full self to the session. So there's something for me about paying attention to that and being aware that actually there's a lot going on for me at the current time, which is perfectly okay. And don't try and fight it, because if you try and fight your feelings, you will always lose. But just paying attention to them and just being aware that that can impact on how well the client may decide to interact with me.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We need less engagement with social media, fake news. Priority is to focus on what's within our control and sphere of influence and have the courage to take action. Conflict, definitely go slow to go fast. What needs to be put on hold first? We need true honesty to answer that. The priority is to accommodate paradoxes and accepting not knowing. Carolina in Portugal, could I invite you to share a bit more on that? Hi, Carolina, you're on mute. Just unmute yourself.
Great to meet you. I'm not very fluent in English. I understand quite well. This is about when you have a clear vision. I think most of us have to deal, as you have said, before starting anything else, to be present, to deal with fear. And then we can move to the vision. How do we see ourselves in near future? Not a very far future. And having this in some kind of visualization and definition, we can start working on the paradoxes. How can we accommodate paradoxes? We life is a continuous paradox. We live in paradoxes. We don't notice them because we have the patterns we have in terms of mindsets are clearly set in terms of certainty and predictability. And so I work with managers and executives, and life at this level and decision making is a continuous paradox management.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing paradox management. So they have to turn the mindset, most of our clients, into an ability to deal with both sides of the brain, if I may say so. This is quite fantastic. When they discovered the possibility to accommodate these, decisions are rooted in a more inner and confident way.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you so much. And thanks for also joining in the dialogue. So we also have in the chat the conflict. Going from bottom. I think we need to be braver and to use this experience to focus more collectively on a fairer and more equitable society. Priority doesn't always mean things we need to do first. It should also be things we need to stop doing. I love the idea of a not-do list. This is something that I learned from a coach about 7 years ago. Write your to-do list, but write your not-do list. And I think in this moment of COVID-19 and everything that's been going on, the not-do list is more important than the to-do list. Understanding and accepting the current realities. We need clarity in managing polarities. The priority is to hearing, noticing, and make meaning. And the conflict is having time to digest and simultaneously act with purpose and decisively. Anna, do you want to jump in and say a bit more about that?
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Hi everyone. And it's so good to have someone also from Portugal. Hi, Carolina. So yeah, as you you read my comment, I guess the need is to see what is not obvious, and is to ponder, and as Carolina mentioned, these paradoxes, and I call it polarities, because they are part of a continuum. So we need to make we need to make choices, and choices are not obvious. And the other aspect is about this conflict of giving time to process, as I said, to digest, to integrate, to understand, to experience, and simultaneously we need to act decisively, and also on time, and with intentionality. So for me, it's this difficulty to clearly understand where to put my energy, where to invite my clients to put their energy. And I agree with you, this not to-do list is also a relevant one. Yeah, anything else?
So yeah, so Anna, let's hear from anyone else want to say something that hasn't yet been said on this topic, on this first one, the barriers and the needs, priorities. I think we've had a lot in chat. Tension between context and experience.
It's Naomi. I just wanted to highlight again what Verity, I think, said was this is a time to practice being as a coach, and as like to practice this with our coachees, or to get them to focus on it, because it's such a big emotional need to do things and to make that feel like that it makes you more. But a pandemic is a perfect time to actually just be, spend time with family, spend time on things that's really important. And I think that's a really important role we can play, to actually put the emphasis there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. So we've talked about broadly those challenges and the needs and priorities, but I want to move on to this question about, stuckness. So the question here is, where do we sense that we're holding ourselves back collectively? And where is there collective tension? So I'm inviting you here to sort of rise above our individual contexts and think about us as a force for good, as a, picking up the theme in the chat of this notion of being braver to build the society that we want. Where are we holding ourselves back collectively, and where is there collective tension in your view? Because it seems that there is a lot of understanding of where we are now, and that we need to be able to hold, the space for something different in the world, and that there's tension in that. There's tension in how that occurs. And yeah, I'm curious about where you sense there's collective tension. You see with these images here, like where are we kind of stuck in the mud, and where are we kind of like, where are the kind of different ways, where are the collective tensions kind of rubbing up, against each other, pulling against each other. I think we've collectively got stuck on the concept that this period of time is the in-between pre and post-COVID. I think there's an overall population tension fueled by fake news and misinformation, stuck in a world where keywords are driving the way we communicate. Collective tension that we as coaches should not bring our emotions, experiences to the coaching relationship. Navigating compassion, competitive axis. Collective tension between environmental and economic systems. Wow, those are they all strike me as big. Those are big thoughts. Let's give a moment or two for any others to come into chat, and then we'll hear from a few people. I'm experiencing clients who are not able to accept their vulnerability as a strength. Senior leaders still seeing vulnerability in the workplace as a weakness rather than example of authentic leadership. Any other thoughts? Nicola, any other ones? When to challenge and how much to challenge, regards taking action, very much how to focus more on just the support side. Kevin, I'm experiencing similar situation. Yeah. So let's hear, we might risk not seeing the all and the interconnections and therefore opting for solutions that won't work and will bring more problems. Yeah. Collective tension, possibly a global conundrum of economy versus health. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So can we hear from Rory? Let me just stop sharing. Rory, could you say a bit more about your thinking on this one? You're on mute, Rory.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, we've kind of looked at coaching as like an individual pursuit in many ways. But you know, Peter Hawkins said something interesting recently about when the banks failed, where were all the coaches that were coaching the banks? And what is, do we have a directive role? Do we have a role? I know here in Ireland, for instance, organized religion is not as strong. People used to look to the church for guidance. People used to look to politics for guidance. And I suppose I wonder, and I've overheard some discussions around, if the approach to problem solving, which up to now has been very kind of adversarial, almost Aristotelian in the approach of how we look for wisdom, that we might have a role collectively as coaches to point towards a different way of making progress as a global community, because we're faced with global problems, and they can't really be solved by individual nations. They have to be solved by a different way of approaching how we do that. And perhaps we have a role as coaches in creating that awareness that it's no longer an individual pursuit. Survival is now more than ever an interdependent activity. So that's what comes up for me anyway.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Let me just ask if anyone else wants to jump in and just comment on what's just been said.
Rory, I think it was at the EMCC conference or the Global Summit last year that Peter was talking about that. I'm in a profession group audit, which is a third line of defense. And we are so used to being called out as the profession that where were we when the banks went, had the meltdown as well. So I just want to say I can so much relate to that. And then being a coach on top of that, I think that, focusing on where were we is the wrong way to go, but rather focusing on how we can help going forward, what lessons do we learn. I think that's where the focus should be.
Okay, So I think that has brought up a really key theme, and there were some other comments in chat about we're stuck because we're looking to powers that be, to government for leadership on a way forward, but we need to start supporting our clients to be their own leaders as well as ourselves, you know, which also connects with that theme, and also this tension between the economy and collective well-being. And in general population terms, the tensions between people who fear COVID versus people who think this is a political ruse or farce. Many of the former are frightened to have an opinion. So I think that, you know, with that sort of segue, I want to move us into the third part of this dialogue. So on this part, it's really about, you know, the challenges that we want to actually address. So I think that in some ways we've already answered that, the challenges that we want to address, and but let's kind of like take a moment to think through what's the central challenge to overcome in our profession right now. And this could be like a summary of what you've just heard, but to actually get us to think about this, you know, in a sort of like broader way. I had the opportunity recently to interview David Clutterbuck, and this was actually during COVID, and it was a 45-minute interview. And the main topic was about systemic approaches to coaching. But there was one part where we were discussing what's the shift that we need to make collectively. And I just want to play you that 1 minute of this video.
Problems that we have is so many people who are drawn to coaching are people who are needy themselves, and whose thought processes are at a very low level in terms of cognitive development. So we find very low levels of reflexive practice, for example. And in coach assessment centres, we find many coaches who've got hundreds of hours of coaching, but it's all the same. They haven't grown. They may have been on courses, but none of it's stuck. It's not changed. It may have changed the tools and techniques they use, but it hasn't changed who they are. And when we think about the 4 levels of coach maturity, going from a models-based approach where you're doing coaching to people, to a process-based approach where you're doing coaching with somebody, to a philosophy-based approach where you're integrating who you are with what you do. And then on to the systemic eclectic, where you step back and you see everything in a much more complex an accepting way, if you like. This whole process, many people, most coaches are still stuck at the first of those 2 levels. And so there's something that needs to happen for them in terms of their personal maturity to take them into team coaching, or we're finding that actually the journey into team coaching is enabling to advance in their personal maturity. So it's an interactive process.
So these are, for the benefit of everybody in the dialogue, so I pulled out David Clutterbuck's model of the 4 levels. So he referred to models-based, moving up to the sort of managed eclectic, where you go sort of beyond the philosophy-based coaching, but where you can really enable things to happen. So I want to come back to our question that's in chat, which is, you know, what is the central challenge that you believe we need to overcome in our profession right now? And just take a moment to reflect on that and to write something in chat. So Rory's written, perhaps as a profession we need to make the evolution from independence to interdependence. Are we even a profession, or are we a skill set, or are we both? It's interesting because up until now, as a team coach and as somebody that's written about team coaching and as the core of my work, I now think about systemic as not just the system of the organization, but really in a very big sense because of what we're living through now. So I think, you know, that it's an interesting sense, like even the definition of systemic approaches now needs to be bigger potentially to what we were thinking they were. Any other thoughts on this?
Geetu, can you maybe tell us where you published the interview with David Clutterbuck? Because I'd like to listen to the whole one.
Yeah, so actually, it's not published anywhere yet. We did like a two-way. We did 45 minutes of interviewing David, and he also interviewed us, you know, as a collective team on team coaching. And yesterday I was re-watching the whole thing to find like this piece because I remember when David said that, I remember at the time, I remember the visceral feeling of like, wow, you know, that's such an important voice on, but I didn't realize until looking at it again yesterday that it's been May, June, July, 4 months since he said that. So, you know, he was sort of like way ahead of the thinking that we need something different. Still a challenge for people to see the benefits. So let's hear from a few people that we haven't heard from. So if I could call on Selen, would you like to comment on this topic?
Yeah, I think in agreement with one of the with agreement with one of the comments on systemic, I think it's about being more systemic, taking into account the organisation and also the individual as well outside that organisation.
Okay, thank you very much. Priyamvada, would you like to comment on what you just said?
Hello, I'm Priyamvada. I'm from Sydney.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I didn't join in, but systemic coaching, you know, it does make so much of sense to me. I'm as a corporate trainer, whenever we do like leadership training, you see that you know, coaching only 1 or 2 person doesn't bring about the change, and very often it takes the team to be coached and to be brought along. And it does make so much of sense, systemic coaching. And I think as coaches, this is the approach that we should be doing, and not just coaching one individuals in silos.
Okay, thank you very much. How do I pronounce your name? I pronounce your name.
It's Priyamvada.
Priyamvada. Thanks.
Priyamvada.
It's
Yes.
probably late there. You probably are the
yeah, it's nearly 9 o'clock in the evening.
Thank you for joining us. Anyone else want to comment on this? We've got one final question for everybody before we close that I want to just hear from. Audrey. Audrey, we haven't heard your voice yet.
Good morning. I suppose my last comment there was to see coaching recognised as a profession. Over social media, the amount of quick coaching courses that were taking place, and even looking on LinkedIn, everybody seems to be a coach for something. So it dilutes the value, I believe, of what coaching can truly deliver. And there doesn't seem to be anybody to say, you know, this is what a coach is, this is what it can do. You know, you could have a coach for decluttering, you could have a coach for, I don't know, coach for anything at this stage.
I remember going through a phase about 6 years ago where I didn't want to use the word coach in anything that was used to describe who I was. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, we're touching on almost like the role of coaching, as well as the body of coaches, as well as what the need is in the world today. And the three of those things need to all come together so that we can be a powerful force for change. That's what's really sort of struck me in what we've discussed. So we've got one final question, which is metaphors. So we had metaphors that we shared back at the start of this. So if you could like describe what today's dialogue has been. So today's dialogue has been about barriers, challenges and tensions. So final question is, how would you describe as a metaphor in a single word or a couple of words, like what this dialogue has brought up? Leap of faith from Naomi. Other metaphors. And Nicola, if we've got anything coming through. Richard, a spacewalk with no gravity.
There's nothing through from the YouTube
I think, okay.
joiners at the moment.
Curiosity. The problem is never the problem. So Kevin mentioned curiosity, and Priyambada said the problem is never the problem. Jafar, onion. Carolina, breathe deeper. Stream meets river from Rory. Julia, collaboration. Selan, self-reflection. Coiled spring flexing with tension, however, huge springing potential. Anna, see what is not obvious, holding breath, seeing barbed wires. All right. The person is not the problem is the problem. Michael White quote, spheres of control and influence. So the next dialogue, to bring this, I know, being mindful of the time, I thought that this was a really interesting insight into what's kind of in our minds and in our hearts, in terms of, you know, what are the issues and the challenges. The next dialogue is going to take these themes that we've come up with today, and you can see that those have taken the discussion further from where we were at the end of dialogue 1, to now really think through of how do we resolve those needs, how do we come together as an actual professional body, how do we take this systemic approach, and how do we actually you know, adopt that role of creating a better society. So Nicola's put a link in the chat to the next dialogue for signing up for that. It's been my great pleasure to facilitate this conversation for all of us. We're going to stay connected for another 10-15 minutes for anybody that wants to stay and chat sort of informally. But we are really grateful for your feedback as well, because it's the feedback from the last session that actually led to a few, you know, subtle, nuanced kind of tweaks in what we did. So let me just hear from a few people at the end, anybody that can stay. Nicola, anything you want to add?
I just want to, again, I mean, this has been such a rich conversation, you know, from an EMCC Global point of view. Thank you all so much for coming and for contributing so warmly as well. Geetu, thank you for leading this discussion on behalf of everybody. It's been absolutely enlightening. I think the next session that you'll be leading will be a very interesting, not a conclusion, I don't think we're ever going to get to a conclusion, but certainly a very, very good point to consider everything we've spoken about thus far, and also what those solutions are going to be for us going forward as well. And I think that will be a very good and very valuable one, and, you know, thank you in advance for that one too. If you've not already signed up for that one, please do. I've left a link in the comments, and I'll send you a link after this meeting as well. But Geetu, thank you again for leading this. It's very, very, very warmly appreciated. Very appreciated. Thank you.
Can't happen without Nicola's support to bring this all to fruition. Everything that you do, Nicola, is actually what's supporting this dialogue. But also, I would say to all of you, I feel the natural tension in not wanting to move into action and solution yet. I just want to, you know, call that out, because the next dialogue is in a month from now. I'm actually going to be, well, plan A is I'm on a small family vacation We don't yet know where or how or what. I may just be sat exactly where I am now in a staycation, but the plan is that in those days I will be in a different location for 4 or 5 days, and I do feel the tension inside of, you know, are we ready for solutions? But I think I'd invite everybody to really think about, you know, the outputs. We'll try and get these outputs to you a lot sort of like earlier than we did on this one. So that you can see, you know, you can re-watch the video, you can look at all of the outputs in chat. I found that really interesting to reflect on what you know, all of the comments were. And next time we will look at what we can do collectively. And as we said at the start, no one person has the solution. So thank you, everybody. Very good to see everybody. And yeah, and thanks also our colleagues in Australia, Malaysia, who were furthest east. Yeah, it's been wonderful to see everybody in different countries. All right.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the YouTube live link, and then we're here for a few more minutes. So, live stream. Thank you to our YouTube joiners.